So, what if the roots of modern skepticism didn't actually come from Enlightenment Europe? What if they came from the indigenous peoples of the Americas? Today, we're going to break down a really powerful argument that completely turns that conventional history on its head. And at the heart of this whole story is a puzzle, a real head scratcher that challenges pretty much everything we think we know about belief. I mean, could a language itself, its actual grammar, its rules, make it impossible for people to even conceive of a god? Okay, so our story kicks off in the Amazon rainforest back in 1977. We meet Daniel Everett, a Christian missionary. He has one mission: translate the Bible and convert the Purha, a small, isolated indigenous community. The thing is, for 2 centuries, every single missionary who tried before him had totally failed. Now, you'd think this would be a story about his faith winning out, but this mission, it pushed Everett right into a profound personal crisis that was going to change his life forever. So who exactly are the Purha? Well, the source material paints a fascinating picture. They're these fiercely self-sufficient people. They live day to day as hunter-foragers, and get this, they share everything without any kind of formal hierarchy. They choose not to store food because they're just that confident in their skills. In fact, researchers who lived with them actually called them the happiest people they'd ever met. So you can see, they didn't exactly seem like they needed saving. To really get the massive cultural gap Everett was facing, listen to this little story. One day, a Puraha woman saw him putting mustard on a sandwich, and she just pointed and said, "Look, Dan's eating bird shit." I mean, there was just no frame of reference for it. That was the kind of fundamental challenge he was dealing with. But the real barrier, the one he just couldn't get past, wasn't just cultural. It was literally hardwired into the grammar of their language. And this one linguistic feature, well, it would change everything for Everett. Everett eventually figured out what he called the immediacy of experience principle. The entire Puraha language and their whole culture just revolves around direct personal experience. It's a language built for the here and now. They don't have distinct words for colors or numbers, and there's no past or future tense in the way we'd recognize it. And here's the craziest part. Everett discovered this core grammatical rule. In Puraha, you can't just state a fact. Every single verb has to include how you know something. Did you see it with your own eyes? Did you hear it from someone who saw it? Or did you just figure it out from the evidence? If you can't cite your source, your sentence is basically nonsense. So you can probably see the problem this creates, right? How on earth do you tell the story of Jesus in a language that demands direct evidence? When Everett tried, the Puraha just asked, "Well, did you ever meet Jesus?" When he said no, they were just completely baffled. Why would you even talk about someone you've never met? For them, a story without a source you can check wasn't just unbelievable, it was literally unspeakable. And facing this linguistic wall day after day, it ultimately led Everett to abandon his own faith. But here's the thing. Everett's story isn't some isolated incident. The source video argues it's really an echo of a much older encounter, one that amazingly played a role in shaping the European Enlightenment itself. Let's rewind the clock, way back to the 1680s. There's this French aristocrat, the Baron de la Hontan, and he goes to live with the Wendat people in Canada. He ends up recording these long, incredible dialogues with a brilliant Wendat statesman named Addario. He publishes a book about it, and it becomes a total sensation in Europe, influencing some of the key thinkers who would go on to define the Age of Reason. And the debate between them? It feels incredibly modern. You have La Hontan pushing the idea that Christianity is the one absolute truth, while Addario calmly explains that, hey, the Wendat believe in a creator, but they prefer tranquility of mind over getting into endless arguments about stuff that just can't be proven. And there it is, the exact same fundamental challenge Everett would face 300 years later. Addario demands proof. He says, "Show me the evidence. Put it right here, in front of my eyes." He is directly calling out this European reliance on faith and something that's unseen and totally unprovable. But Addario also used this really sharp, disarming logic. He pointed out the contradictions between the French Catholics and the English Protestants. He's basically saying, if this one truth is so obvious, why does it create so much bitter division? For many Europeans at the time, hearing this kind of rational critique was totally revolutionary. So what's the thread connecting a 17th century Wendat statesman and a 20th century missionary? Well, this is where the source material uses these two stories to build its main thesis. a really sharp critique of what it calls intellectual arrogance. Now, the source defines a very specific mindset it calls a colonizer mentality. And what that means, according to the source, is the absolute conviction that your way of thinking is the only right way. And that conviction is so strong, it justifies destroying other cultures just to spread your ideology. As the source argues, this mindset isn't just limited to religious missionaries. And this is where the source makes its most direct and definitely most controversial connection. It argues that you can see this exact same mentality in some of the big names from the New Atheist movement of the early 2000s. The video points to Christopher Hitchens aligning with evangelicals to support the War on Terror, or Richard Dawkins opposing the inclusion of indigenous Maori knowledge in science as modern examples of this same dogmatic, exclusionary worldview. And really, this brings us to the core philosophical argument being made in the source material. It's suggesting that whenever any group, whether it's religious or secular, insists that it has an exclusive monopoly on the truth, it ironically ends up destroying the very conditions of free inquiry you need to discover truth at all. So we're left with this one last really powerful question. The evidence-based skepticism of the Pirha and the Wendat challenged the dogmas of their time. So the source asks us to consider this. Maybe protecting different ways of thinking, real, true intellectual diversity, isn't just some nice progressive ideal, but the absolute essential foundation for any genuine search for truth.